Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jarrell Mason, aka Jay Mason. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers right here to be celebrated. With me right now, I have a man hailing from Dallas, Texas. He wrote records for LSG, Silk, Tony Thompson, Casey and JoJo, among others. Then in 1998, put out a record on Relativity called Sex Down with a record called I Don't Wanna See, which was a staple on Midnight Love back in the day on BET. If you know, you know. We're gonna get into all that and then some with my man Link. Link, thanks for coming on Beyond the Album Cover and welcome.
Hey man, I appreciate you having me, brother. It's an honor to be here, man.
Man, I appreciate you just taking the time, so let's just jump right on in. Born and raised in Dallas, Texas, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dallas, Texas, man. Oak Cliff. That's my hood.
All right, if you know, you know. Don't be claiming Oak Cliff. If you don't know nobody over there, you
Right.
will get checked.
Right on. That is for sure.
All right, so who are some of your influences growing up, and did you cut your teeth in the talent show circuit before hooking up to singing in Protege?
Oh man, of course, man. That was a big thing back in my day, man. Getting on the talent show. You know what I'm saying? From high school to city talent shows to just wherever opportunity lend itself to be a part of one, man. So of course I was a part of that talent show circuit. I didn't win many of them, you know what I'm saying? But it wasn't really important, man. It was just cool to be able to get on the stage and get used to being in front of a crowd and experiencing, different type of things that may happen while you're on stage or whatever. So it was a good experience. And it was prepping me for what was to come. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Yeah, so how did you end up coming into Protege? But before we go into Protege, who were some of the musical influences that inspired you to get in the game? Were you influenced by New Edition, any other acts prior to, or what was being played on K104?
My biggest inspiration to do what I do, man, was Donny Hathaway. Um, I was with a friend of mine, man, a long time ago, and he had this cassette. Damn, I just aged myself. But he had a cassette tape of Donny Hathaway, and I just could not believe how incredible his vocals were. Like they were so silky smooth, man. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I got a lot of other artists who I liked back in the day, who I grew up on, like of course the Jacksons, um, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder. You know, I was a fan of like the real soulful, old school R&B cats, but Donny Hathaway was the main inspiration for me doing what I do.
Okay. Now, which high school in Dallas did you attend?
It ain't but one high school in Dallas, man. That's South Oak Cliff, brother. The big SOC, man. The original number one in Texas. Go the Bears, baby.
All right. And we know with Dallas, the Friday Night Lights or something serious, was it the same thing applied to the talent show circuit where would they have citywide competitions between all the different schools, or was it where you were just restricted based on doing talent shows in your school?
Well, it wasn't even really, if we had a talent show at my school, it was restricted to the school. But if it was citywide, it was just that. It was citywide. There were no restrictions, man. It was first come, I mean, all come, all welcome or whatever. But you know what I'm saying? So it was a citywide talent search. Everybody was welcome.
Yeah, so you probably heard, hey, I heard Carter got so and so. Oh, I heard Skyline got so and so. We're like, hey, let's take it to the stage then.
Uh, I I didn't really, I didn't really hear about other talented people from other schools back then, man. We had so much talent at my high school. Them was the only cats that I was really worried about. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. All
Yeah,
right. So how did you end up linking up in Protege?
man. It's funny, man. I had a friend. His name was Leonard, and he used to always tell me about this one cat that was such a dope producer. And the producer's name was Daryl Delight Allenby. I just call him Delight, but that's his name. And Leonard used to always talk to me about this dude, man. He said, man, you need to hook up with this dude. And unbeknownst to me, he was telling Delight the same thing about me. Like, man, I know this dude that's got crazy vocals, man. You need to hook up with him. So one day, man, we actually got a chance to hook up. And what's crazy is within 5, 10, 15 minutes of meeting each other, we had written a song, recorded it, and was done with it, man. You know what I'm saying? It was just we had instant chemistry. He loved music just as much as I did, and he actually was starting the group, and I was really against being in a group because I, I had become accustomed to just depending on myself. So I didn't really want to take on the whole, issues of somebody else and this person late, this person don't want to practice and stuff like that. But after a while, man, Delight convinced me to become the fourth member of that group, man. And that's what I did, man. We became Protege, man. We tried to do our thing, brother.
Now with Protege, you mentioned a four piece. What was the style and sound of the group like?
Man, back then, man, we emulated Jodeci. That's who we looked up to at the time because Jodeci was fresh out and they were incredible. They had taken the world by storm, with the vocals and the style and the way they were, the stage presence. So that's who we mimicked ourselves after back then in Protege. Jodeci.
And with Jodeci, and I say this a lot, that the contributions for Uptown, rest in peace, Andre Harrell, should not be a footnote because if you think about what they did, Andre Harrell took what he learned under Russell Simmons at Rush Management, put his own spin and flavor with Uptown, and then it just added the street and the sweetness of R&B. And when they met in the room, it became an instantaneous match that we still feel and see to this day.
That is true, brother. That is true, man. That is true. I totally agree with you, buddy.
Now, you said Jodeci was the main influence for Protege. Now, did you have any extra motivation to really get in the game once you saw the DOC pop? Because a lot of people don't know DOC, origin from Dallas, got to start with the Fila Fresh crew before going out west.
That is correct. That is correct. Not really, man. I mean, like I said, man, I knew Dallas was rich with a lot of talented cats. It was just that at up until that point, up until DOC, we really hadn't had anybody, you know what I'm saying, to come from the D to blow up like DOC did, man. But I knew that, if we put the work in because we were very talented, you know what I'm saying? We were young, ambitious. I knew that if we put the work in, we was gonna be all right. You know what I'm saying?
hmm Yeah, so all that rehearsal, all that work. Now, was Protege cutting independent records at that point, trying to get on K104, or were you guys going to New York or LA to shop?
Actually, what we did, man, we were very fortunate. We met a guy named Dave DeBerry who had actually produced a record on the B side of the record Ice Ice Baby for Vanilla Ice. He produced the record on the B side of that, which was called Go Ill. And he was from New York. And I don't know who was the catalyst in us meeting, but we met Dave, man. He saw the potential in us as a group. He brought us to New York, man, and housed us in his crib. And he had a studio in his crib, and we just went to work, man, in New York, man, by you know putting together a dope demo, and then actually being right there in the city to be able to go to labels in person and try to shop a deal.
Yeah, and this was back before label offices had securities where you could just walk in and you could pretty much literally sing for your supper.
Right, right, and that's exactly what we did, man. We bust up in there, man, and just started blowing, man, and we got had a lot of attention from a lot of people back then, man. I miss them days, dog. I miss them.
Yeah, that was really, you really had to prove yourself. Now, was there any labels that was interested in signing you guys? Did you guys get signed, or was it where, you're signed, you're recording, label heads change, staff change, then you guys get shelved? What ended up happening after that?
Yeah, actually, we did. After we put on this incredible showcase, man, we actually did get signed to Eddie F and the Untouchables. Back then, he had just dropped the group intro. Um, so we didn't get an opportunity to come out because we were shelved for whatever reason. We were supposed to come out on Motown. I'll never forget that. But for whatever reason, they were, it never did happen. And then after a while, I just decided at that point to go solo. So unfortunately, the group never really got a chance to You know what I'm saying? Show the
Mm.
world what we're made of.
Yeah, now with Motown, I believe at that time was Gerald Busby still at Motown, or was Vita Sparks still at Motown when you guys were signed, or you have no
Man,
recollection?
to be honest, man, I can't even remember. That was so long ago, bro. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? The only person we really knew then was Eddie L. Now, it's possible it could have been Gerald Busby because I kind of vaguely remember that, but I just
Mm.
don't want to. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I got you.
I
I
mean,
got you. Okay, so you guys got shelved and you decided to go back doing solo. So what was your mindset coming from a group situation, going back solo and having to start to climb all over again?
basically, man, it was just basically going back to where my mindset had been in the beginning when I really didn't want to be a part of a group. You know what I'm saying? So I always knew that no matter what, even if the group came out and became very successful, that at some point I was still going to be a solo artist because that was just who I was. You know what I'm saying? So basically, Delight, who was the cat, like I said, who did all the producing, he just kind of forged ahead and started creating relationships with a lot of labels, started doing some remixes, and he built his name up. You know what I mean? And then when he did that, he got on the horn with me and said, Link, yo, it's time for you to come on up to New York. That's what I did. I gave my job. I was working at a bank at the time. I gave my job like I took a 30-day little sabbatical, you know what I mean? Because I ain't really know what was going to happen. I ain't want to just quit and lose my job. So I made sure I kept my job in place. Went to New York, man. We put together a dope demo. And from there, man, the rest is history.
And as like you said, the rest is history. So the song that really put you on the map and spawned a bidding war and labels interest was My Body for LSG. And for the LSG, for those that don't know, Gerald Levert, Keith Sweat, Johnny Gill. So what was it like with you going into writing a record for those three powerhouses and knowing who goes where and not to be able to step on egos because you have these three massive superstars coming together to form a supergroup.
Correct, correct. Well, actually, My Body was my song. When I just spoke of the demo that Delight and I put together, My Body was one of the songs that was on the demo.
Mm,
So what happened was in the midst of Delight shopping a deal for me over at Electra, where he had a good relationship with Merlin Bob, Sylvia Rome, they heard the My Body joint and they lost their mind. At that time, LSG's record was done. It was already done. But when they heard My Body, they you know what I'm saying, they went after me repeatedly for that record, man. Just it literally took about 2 months before I decided, all right, man, you know what I'm saying? Because that was my record and I didn't want to give it up. But they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I knew that if I gave them that record, which they said it would be the first single, I knew I was going that was gonna be a historical record. Also, I knew that it would open doors for me to write for other artists. So as hard as it was for me to give LSG that record, I'm very proud and very glad that I did do it.
yeah, it was a crossover smash R&B and pop. And the story of with My Body originally being your record going on LSG was similar to the story Chucky Booker told me about Turned Away. Because that was originally supposed to go for Troop. But when he played it for Sylvia Rome told him, this is staying on your album. But he tried to convince her this is for Troop. And when he told Troop, no, Sylvia wants me to keep it for me. We want a record similar. And that's how Spread My Wings came about for Troop.
Right on. It's funny how things happen, man, in the business, man. But you never know, man. That's how it go, bro.
Right. And I want to know with My Body, one of my favorite LSG records, was there inspiration behind the 9110024 number?
Well, actually, the my body, I mean, the 911 song was a record that was on my album. So it was a record that we were working on, but it did actually come from the my body joint. So we basically just kind of ripped that out of there and decided just to make a full-fledged song out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just basically just saying, hey, this is an emergency. 911 is an emergency. You need to get at me right now. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, classic record. And I'm sure back in the day you heard nothing but high school and college bands playing My Body, especially if you had the right sound, right kick and everything. Now, when that record's taking off, who are some of the other artists that came knocking at your door and said, "Hey, I need Japan"?
Man, after My Body blew up, I had there was Silk, Gerald Levert on his solo album. Next, of course, you already mentioned Tony Thompson. There was Adina Howard, um, Casey and JoJo. Man, it was just so many people. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, that just us giving LSG that record was a blessing in disguise because it opened up every door that we could possibly could be open for us to write.
And what was it like writing for Silk? Because I think Silk is underrated when you talk about male R&B groups of the '90s, especially Lil G.
Man, it was cool, man. It was just like writing for them was just like writing for me. You know what I'm saying? Lil G is an incredible vocalist. At the time, people really didn't know that John was as dope as he was. But when we started working with him and we heard his voice, Delight and I was just like, yo, we gotta bring this cat to the front a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? So when you listen to all of those Silk records that we did, you will hear a lot of John. You know what I'm saying? But those dudes are like my brothers. It was very easy to write for them because we hear music the same exact way. So you know what I'm saying? We created a lifelong bond with them dudes, man, that would never, ever, ever fade.
Right now, when you're writing for a group, what is the process of making sure who fits what? And like you mentioned with John and Silk, where you have a guy that's being underutilized, where you have a certain producer or writer locked into one voice because they're the voice that the consumer hears on the record. How do you balance that out?
Basically, I never really got into that. That was all the job of the producer, which is Delight. Um, he was the mastermind of who sings what, who comes in here, what part you gonna sing, and things of that nature. Man, Delight was, he was a genius when it came to that. You know what I'm saying? Because, like you say, egos do get involved, and especially if one person has been, you know, accustomed to just leading all the songs, and now all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying, you got to share the limelight. You know what I mean, with your counterpart. It may not be an easy thing to accept. But them guys were so gracious and humble that it wasn't a problem, man. But Delight was the cat that made those decisions as to who sing what. Like with My Body, how he picked Gerald to sing this part and Keith sing this part, Johnny sings this part. You know what I'm saying? What I do know about Delight at the end of the day, he gonna do the best thing for the record. Period. It don't matter. He ain't trying to appease nobody and make nobody feel good. It's all about coming out that room with a hit record.
Right. Now, for your writing process, do you normally write kind of isolated and come back to the studio with a record, or do you have to have the reference first so that way you could get ideas and kind of do a scratch of what you want to do?
And with me, it just happens different ways at different times. Sometimes, I'm commissioned to write for somebody specifically for a specific artist. Sometimes I'll have a track already written and just need to put some lyrics and melodies to it. Sometimes I don't have anything, but just I can hear it in my head and then write that way. So inspiration comes in many many forms, man. And
Mm,
and in that business, when when they call upon you to deliver a record, you got to deliver it. You know what I'm saying? It don't matter what the process is. You got to be ready when the time comes. You can't call them back and say, man, give me a couple of weeks, blah, nah, because they'll go find somebody else. So when the pressure was on me to deliver the record like immediately, I was able to do that. But there were other times, man, when I might be in the gym or something, then something just, catch my eye or I think of something, then that will cause me to write something. So, inspiration comes in different forms.
right. And you got to be quick and consistent.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because like you said, if you ain't quick and you ain't consistent, they'll find somebody who will. Now, while you're writing all these records, at this same time, Erica Badu was taking off. So what was it like when you saw her rise coming in with Baduism and everything that was going on with Kadam Rassenberg and her coming from Dallas and seeing the world respond to her and her being well received and accepted like she did, like she was when she first dropped.
Man, I thought it was dope, man. Again, being from Dallas, we had very few R&B artists to explode on the music scene in my era. And Erica, I can truly say was for me was probably the first one that I saw really just blow up like that. I mean, yeah, DOC, which was on the hip hop scene, but I'm talking about from an R&B, soul type of situation. She was the first one from the D to do that, man. So I was so extremely proud of Erica to put Dallas on the map, so to speak, and let them know, hey, man, D-Town got people. We got talented people here, man. Y'all need to pay attention. You know what I'm saying? At the time, Houston was getting a lot of, you know what I mean? They was getting a lot of the credit for the Texas swag, so to speak. But Badu, she definitely caused everybody to start paying attention to Dallas.
Yeah, because like you said, prior to her, when you think of that Texas music, you tend to think of everything coming out of Houston with everything coming out of Rap a Lot and H Town and what they were doing, and later Destiny's Child coming out and everything. And like you said, when she came out, that really put Dallas on the map musically, and that served as a stamp of pride. Like, hey, we got our own stuff too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's definitely what happened, man. And I was so glad that she finally got that success because it actually, kind of made it a little bit easier for me and for the artists that came after me. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Real quick, Detour. I'm curious, do you know if the singer Cindy Mizell, if she's from Dallas? Cindy
Say
Mizell.
again. What's her name?
Cindy Mizell. She sang backgrounds for a bunch of different artists, and she was in this band called Attitude back in the early 80s. They were affiliated, I believe, through the system because they did work on them. They had this record called If You Could Read My Mind, which was a staple out in the Dallas area back in the day because I remember seeing comments on YouTube that K104 used to play that record a whole lot. I was just
Oh,
curious if you know if she was from Dallas or not.
no, I have no idea,
No
man. I
idea?
that record though. Wasn't
Yeah.
a perfect record here, but I'm not familiar with her as an artist.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna fast forward to this point. Were there any other labels knocking for a solo deal from you, or was Relativity really the only one that had the deal that really caught your attention?
No, Elektra actually had agreed to sign me as an artist. This is where uh, LSG was. This is where Silk was. This is where Gerald had his solo joint. So they were going to sign me, but they were just going to take their time with putting me out. And Delight, what he didn't want to hear that at the time. It was like, no, we're not sitting up waiting on nobody. So Relativity, who was actually on Sony, they were ready immediately. You know what I mean? They weren't wasting no time. We was like, nah, we want to link now. Not only do we want to link, we want Delight, we want to get behind your whole production company and things of that nature. So we decided to roll with Relativity.
Ah, so it would have been a situation where you guys probably would have stayed with a lecturer had they said you get top priority. We're not shelving you to quarter 3. We're just gonna go ahead and put you out the gate.
Well, it wasn't necessarily about us getting top priority because, like I said, it was some heavy hitters over there. You know what I'm saying? But it was about not sitting up waiting to, have the opportunity to put music out because we were ready then. You know what I'm saying? Had they said, yeah, we're gonna sign you, we're gonna begin working on your project immediately, that would have made a difference. But they didn't really have a clear cut timeline as to when we was gonna start. And I wasn't with sitting up waiting on nobody.
Yeah, man, that and back in those days, it was where you had that pecking order where if you were top priority, you pretty much got to the front of the line. Whereas if you are, let's say you're in-house and you're producing, you're writing, they want to keep you around because they don't want to let the source get outsourced to another label to where you got to do what you can as a label, in my opinion, during that time frame to do all that you can to keep them in house because you don't want to lose all the good stuff and then go to ABC Records and make them money and platinum plaques.
Right, right. I'm pretty sure that was the thought process of all the executives on any label, man. You know what I'm saying? So, which is again, which is, hey, if you think about it, that's how they lost me. You know what I'm saying? Because they just didn't. And I got much respect for Merlin Bob and Sylvia Rome. They actually were the ones who broke my first record, which was My Body. So they got the experience. It was just that I just didn't want to wait, man. You know what I'm saying? And over at Relativity, I knew I was gonna be priority on that day.
Right. Now, going to Relativity, did you already have Sex Down already recorded, or was it where you went straight to work once you signed to record Sex Down?
Nah, we didn't have none of that recorded. None of that recorded. We went to work. As soon as we signed, we agreed on the budget. Delight and myself went to work immediately. Also, another member of the squad was Antoinette Robeson. We got in the room, man, and we banged them joints out. All them records were brand new. None of them were old, with the exception of one record that was on that Sex Down album. That was one of a kind. That was the only record that we kind of had already previously kind of worked on years before we came out. But other than that, all them records were brand new.
Made from scratch. Now, how long did it take you to cut the whole album?
Man, I say, man, probably about 3 months,
Three
and it
months?
probably would have been quicker than that. But we were going to different locations and setting up studio time over here and over there. So sometimes the time restraints cause us to not do stuff for like a week, maybe 2 weeks or whatever. But had we been in one spot like then, man, we probably been done in a month.
Wow. Wow. And this was back in the days, people, where you didn't have an at-home studio. You had to physically go to a studio. Somebody had to pay money. And when somebody's paying the money, you had to be on point with your stuff because time was money and money was time.
That is correct. That is correct. That is the old way of doing stuff. You couldn't just pull open your laptop and make a beat and set a mic up, man. You had to actually go to a room. You know what I'm saying? And back then, I give you one better. There was no Pro Tools. We were actually recording on reels. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And then soon after that, I think it was D88. You know what I mean? So times have definitely changed, man.
So this was pre-dat, or you all were still using reels even though dat was still in the mix, or
It
were
was
y'all using both?
yeah, it was all kind of lumped in there together, man. I can remember the reels, I can remember D88, then I can remember using the DAT tapes. You know what I'm saying? That's the era I originated from right there.
Yeah, and you really had to be on point, and your editing skills on those reels
Yep.
had to be precise because if you cut the wrong part, that was it.
Yep. You are actually right, man. These cats these days don't know nothing about that. All they gotta do is push a button and rewind and push record and save and stuff like that. But back then, if you were not on point with that editing, was slicing and doing that reel, it was over for you because it wasn't you couldn't push a button to do it over, man. You had to be on point.
And it wasn't no Ableton people. You really had to have skill.
Yes, sir. You had to have it.
Right now, when the record is completed, did you have a hand in picking what was going to be the lead, what was going to be the follow-up, or did you just leave that stuff up to the labels?
Now, of course, they definitely trusted our opinion because they basically just said, "Here, man, go make the record," and we did. And when we came back with such a dope record, they was like, "Damn," you know what I mean? So they kind of trusted us and let us kind of decide which way or which direction we would go with the record.
hmm Now, I don't want to see, like I mentioned in the intro, was a staple on Midnight Love back around 98, because I remember seeing that as a kid. What was the inspiration behind that record, and what was it like shooting the video for that record?
The video was fun, and you know what I'm saying. I got a chance to work with my girl again. That was the second video that she had been in, Lisa Ray. It was out in Los Angeles, and I just had a great time. That was just it was actually I don't want to see was the third single from the Sex Down album. What you want to do was first, then really want to sex your body, which is the one that Lisa Ray start in the beginning, and I Don't Want to See was basically the follow up.
Okay. Very strong three records and listen to the whole album. The one thing I missed about 90s R&B is the interludes. The interludes were something because it really set the tone for the album, but also it kind of served as a break in the album to where you get some type of comic relief or some type of mood of the album. Whereas now it's more, can't really do that now because with the way people consume music now, at least in my opinion, the attention spans are shorter and you have to have them within the first, I want to say at least 10 seconds of a record. Because if you don't have their pull, then they'll automatically go to something else.
That is correct. Back then, man, you could actually tell a story and set a scene, set the mood, you know what I'm saying, with interludes, preludes, and stuff like that. Now, like you said, these days, people the attention spans are just not there. You know what I'm saying? They want what they want, and they want it when they want it. You know what I'm saying? Which is why the records are individually available for you to purchase. Back in the day, it wasn't like that. You wanted the record, you had to buy the CD. You got to buy this whole thing to hear all these records. Now you can go on the little streaming site with whatever you use, and you can click and see what you listen to and preview the record you want, and then buy that one if you want to, man. So definitely a different time.
Yeah, but you became a better music listener for listening to a whole album because, like you said, you had to physically go to the store, buy a cassette, buy a CD, pay that 11.95 or that 20.95, and sit through 11, 12 tracks on the album, even though if it's something you didn't like, because you made an investment in buying that record.
That is actually true. That's actually true, man. And I believe what listening to records and full albums did back then, man, it gave you a greater appreciation for the artist. You know what I'm saying? To be able to start from the beginning and tell a story and take you all the way to the middle where the story is building. If there's a turn or twist or whatever, throwing that in there and then ending the album on a high note with still telling a story like it's a movie. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So you got to understand where that this was not just about making one record. You know what I mean? This was about making an entire creative picture, a movie that had basically just was made out of music.
Be able to tell a story and really work a record, massage a record in. Now, when cutting Sex Down, were you still writing for other artists at this point, or were you just solely focusing on cutting the album?
I was definitely writing for other people at the point. I was writing for Gerald. We were writing for Silk. Um, Still writing for myself, working on the album. So, we were challenged in a lot of different ways, not just to, try to make my record dope, but we had to try to give Gerald the hit records. We had to try to give Silk the hit records, you know what I'm saying? Keith as well. So, I was definitely working on other people's stuff at the same time.
Now, were there any other records that you wrote for those other artists that you wanted to take back, keep for yourself, but in the end said, nah, this would be better served on them?
My body, like I said, that was the one joint that I did not want to give away because I knew that when that record came out, that was going to change the game a little bit. And I wanted to, you know, be known for the artist that came out with my body. I'm known for the person that wrote it. That's cool too. But back then, man, I wanted to be that guy who sang my body. So my body was the joint that I wanted.
So that was the one that, like you said about the story, that you really wanted to keep for yourself.
Correct. That was the one record, man. Like if out of all the records that I gave, because they we gave Silk a lot of great records. You know what I mean? We gave Gerald great records. But My Body is the one record that I definitely wanted to keep for myself.
And what was it like promoting the Sex Down album? Did they pair you with any acts to go on the road, or were you hopping on spot dates? What was that like touring and promoting the record?
Man, I was doing everything, man. Wherever the opportunity presented itself, I was there. I was on tour. I remember being on tour with back then with it was Maya, Montel Jordan, LL, so many other cats, man. Then I was doing spot dates, promo dates, man. It was a lot of work involved. It was fun, but it was a lot of work.
Yeah, so promo dates, for those that don't know, that's where you have certain dates on a bill where you'll go promote an album and you may would do an in-store signing at somebody's record store, whether it be mom and pop or a chain. And then prior to that, you'll go do your radio press, do the in-store, do the show, and then it's wash, rinse, repeat next city.
It's correct. That is was exactly the process. Showing up in the mom and pop, signing the CDs and the 8x10 glossies, going to the record stores, doing the same thing, man, over and over again, just doing whatever you could to build up a fan base and create a name in that particular market that you were in.
Now, were there certain markets that y'all realized once the records took off where it's like, we need to pay more attention to this area of the country here because our records are getting more pop than, let's say, in the Midwest or on the West Coast?
Man, I would say there were several reasons, man. Chicago, Miami, Atlanta, Detroit, New York, those places there, man, we really didn't have a presence there because the record label that I was on was independent. So, which means they didn't have regional reps in every area. They had to depend on for real independent street reps at the time. So, we missed out on a lot of um, promotion, man, because of not having regional reps in those areas. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I had to go in and try to do, like we were saying, the little mom and pop joints and, and the spot dates in those areas, trying to get them to play the record. You know what I'm saying? But it was very, very difficult without having a rep, without having representation in those areas.
Yeah, because this was back during the days when the major labels had all the muscle, like you mentioned. When you're on the indie as opposed to a major, it's an uphill climb already because the majors have the money and the machine behind it, the pump and the push a record. You have your regional reps going to XYZ radio stations saying, hey, play this. And some of the folks will play it because, hey, I like the record. Others, and I'm going to tell you a little secret. I used to work in radio, by the way, that they would give stuff.
Right.
Yep, it would be some green or some other things.
Right
And we
on,
know what those other things are. We ain't gonna say no names or what, but if you know, you
right,
know.
right
But
on.
sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do in other ways in order to get what you need done. Now, do you think the record would have been bigger had relatively had more resources like the major as far as monies to really properly pump out and push and promote the record?
Well, they had the money because again, they were on Sony, so they had Sony's checkbook, but the record definitely would have been bigger had it been a situation where Relativity had regional reps in all of the regions, and not just dependent solely on somebody that they had to pay to work that record in that region, who really, you know, wasn't really invested like that because once they got paid, that's really all they was, you know what I'm saying, really, really needed because it's not like they were in jeopardy of losing a job if they didn't get the record placed. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Say, for instance, had that same record been on at Electra with that machine or Columbia or anybody like that, man, that record would have definitely been 2 or 3 times platinum.
Yeah, so that's why it was important to have a champion for you at the label that's really going to go hard, that's really going to go to bat for you when somebody said, "Nah, I'm not going to push this record." Where you have somebody saying, "No, we really need to go into overtime and push this record."
We had I don't want people to believe, to think that Relativity was not behind us because they were. They spent their money, they prioritized us. It was just simply the fact that they were back then an independent label battling major labels, and majors had all of those different people in all of those positions, whereas Relativity did not. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? They had to rely on for real independent street reps. And you're just not gonna win that game going up against them powerhouses like Columbia and Def Jam and Elektra and Warner back in the day. We're
Mm,
not gonna win. We're not gonna win that battle.
right. And then speaking of the indie and the majors, it kind of got me thinking that looking back in hindsight, it was amazing to see how No Limit and Cash Money took off to where they were independent labels and how they were able to get national buzz with what they were doing. And it was just crazy to think that, when you have an indie label break through nationally like that, it gives other indie labels hope and push to be like, hey, if we make enough noise in our region, show that we can move numbers without a major label, we'll get a major to come knocking, say, oh, you pushing 500K without us? Oh, let us saddle up and bid with you, and we'll give you a blank check. Do what you want. We gonna get you out.
Mhm. Uh, Master P basically set the blueprint for all independent labels at that point because he showed you back then, hey, you got the money to put behind your own project and you was making music that was dope enough that the people wanted to hear, you could definitely move records without them. And from that point on, Master P and his squad, they changed the game after that because people realized like, yo, you know what? This is how I need to do this from now on. And now that's why now you got so many independent labels and you don't really have a lot of major labels that's still in the game.
Right. And then also at that time too, the Bay Area very big on get it out the mud, do it yourself. Because if you look at what Hammer did prior to him linking up with Capitol, where the Power album was getting moved out of the trunk, and then Capitol came knocking. And as we saw, once Hammer linked up with Capitol, it was game over. And then we get Too Short and E40, and how, like I mentioned earlier, if you make enough noise as an indie, and they at that time they saw you moving numbers without them, of course they're going to want to get in bed with you because they see what it is that you get. And also the one thing that the indies had in their back pocket when the majors came knocking, you had the leverage because you could tell them, oh, I'm moving this without you,
I don't
give me
need
give me a higher number.
right, right. They did not like that. They didn't want to see that. That was bad business for them. But shout out and props to Master P and his squad for changing the game and making the game better for all artists. So to own their own masters, to call their own shots, to be able to pick their own first singles and kind of not give up on the record just because it don't just blow up immediately. You were in charge of everything. Now, it was harder, you know what I'm saying? Because now you got to do all the work. But in the end, it all comes back to you. So it was definitely well worth it.
Yeah, and you also got a bigger piece of the pie too, because back when they had CDs and whatnot, labels, you were getting X amount of cents on a record, and I believe you were indie, you were probably getting a couple of whole dollars
No
per
doubt,
record sold.
no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Like I say, you had to do the lion's share of the work, but at the end of the day, the lion's share of the revenue came back to you, and it was up to you to distro it to whoever made things possible, whoever worked for you. It was on you.
Mhm. Now, looking from inside the industry standpoint, what was your take when the digital revolution first came in? Once Napster and all of the file sharing websites came in, did you think then that, oh, if the industry doesn't pivot, then it's going to crumble? Or were you embracing what was to come with the digital front?
Nah, I ain't really like it, man. To be honest, coming from because it was just you basically took away the money making avenues for the artists. You know what I'm saying? Um, if like I said back then, if you wanted to hear your artist, you had to go and buy the CD. You know what I'm saying? To actually support the record. When all this digital stuff came out, the NAFTA, which changed the game, all you have to do is now go to YouTube and click on this and listen. You know what I'm saying? Now, what's the motivation for a person to go buy this record now when all I got to do is go over here and click it and listen to it 100 times a day? I don't have to own it. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't really like it when that became available to people. But hey, that's the way the game went, man. And you got to either change with the times or get left behind.
Yep, you either evolve or you perish. Now, the same thing with streaming, because as we're seeing now in recent years, where a lot of artists who kind of came in the last bit, where the old school way was done to where streaming is now the main way people consume their music, as to now they didn't factor in those older contracts new mediums and avenues where the music was going to be played, and you're seeing a lot of the artists now re-recording their older material to gain back the masters. But as we're seeing with the royalty rates for the streaming services, is not in line with what artists should be getting, because some artists could do maybe 1,000 streams, only get a couple hundred K for it, and you're expecting them to get like a fraction of a penny per stream.
Can we pause right here for a second? I got to take this phone call.
Go.
Yeah, man. I don't know, man. The with artists not owning their masters back in the day, which when you signed to a label and they paid you money to record, they owned your masters. That's your creativity. They owned it because they used their money. That's why now, I'm rolling every now and then. I got the new Pandora or whatever streaming site on. I hear, one of the old records come out, but it's a freshly recorded record because the artist got hip that, hey, what I need to do now is record this whole song over. And at that point, now they own those masters from that point going forward, and that revenue streams come back directed to them. That's a smart, slick move, man. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah, that's a smart workaround to
Yep.
circumvent what was a bad deal initially when they signed. Is you're taking back ownership. And I think the good thing with the internet now and artists coming to the game is that they know what's out there, and you saw the stories of the people that came before you of what to do and what not to do.
Correct. That is correct. That is correct, brother. Yep.
All right, so you put out an album independently in '08, I believe, Creeping, right?
Creeping. That is correct.
So what was the process of putting out that record and being indie as opposed to being on Relativity for Sex Now?
Man, it was tough, man. It was tough. Back then, you know, I didn't really have all the knowledge of the steps you were supposed to take in being an independent record label owner and being an artist on that label. I got a real true perspective of what it was like for Relativity to be in existence back in the day. Because, like I said, when you're independent, you got to do everything. You know what I'm saying? And for me, I was just an artist, man, who had lyrics and who had melodies. I didn't really know, what I'm saying, the side about the business that you need to do this. You got to set this up, go here. You know what I'm saying? So I basically was just recording the album and putting it out. You know what I'm saying? And really didn't have the marketing and the promotion and all of those things behind it, man. So it was definitely a learning lesson for me, which is why you really haven't seen me put out different projects like that since then, because I know it's kind of worthless and useless to put out a record without any support.
Right. You definitely got to have muscle, and you got to have money. Muscle and money, people. Muscle and
Yes,
money.
sir. Yes,
So
sir.
now I want to talk about really quick. Go back to the '90s. You mentioned Protege was signed to Eddie F with Untouchables, and also at the same time Intro. What was Who are some, in your opinion, the most underrated male R&B groups of the '90s, in your opinion?
Most underrated,
Yes,
man,
sir.
from the 90s, I would have to say Portrait. I used to love them. Um, UNV, I remember them cats. Um, Ideal was kind of those were probably the main ones to me that was underrated back then. I thought all of those groups were dope.
For me, I would say Intro, The Real Seduction.
Okay.
And then another one I would put into mind was You Mind. They were signed to Luke Records back
Okay.
in around '93. I had Buddy on the podcast a while ago. He had told me that originally Let Me Be the One was supposed to go for Mary J. Blige for What's the 411. But what
Oh,
happened was they already had the deadline for that album turned in, so they ended up putting it on them for their album. But I felt, intro should have been bigger than what they were stateside. Of course, they were huge in Europe. And Kenny Green, rest in peace, vocally a problem, pen game a problem. So I really felt intro, should have been bigger, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. Intro was dope. Like I said, when we signed with ADF, intro was just coming out, man, and we was like, whoop, 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 whoop. That's how we gonna sound. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mm,
that's the sound Eddie gave them. We were looking forward to that, man. Because intro was dope, man. Kenny was a dope vocalist, dope writer, man. You know what I'm
right,
saying?
right. And also, wasn't Porsche signed to Eddie F at that time too? The group that Donnell Jones was in. They had a record called "I Can Make You Feel Good."
Was not familiar with the group. I only knew about Donnell. I never heard of
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah. And then fast forward to now, any projects coming out, anything that you're working on, any songs you got placed on artists right now, what you got going on?
You know what, man? As a blessing, man, Drake just released a record with his artist, Smiley, and this the song is called Tumaza. And he sampled Let's Make Love, which is one of my songs from Silk. And the song goes throughout the whole record. It's looped throughout the whole song, man. So big ups to Drake and Smiley for dropping that. I am currently working on right now a couple of EPs as we speak. I've been in the studio every day, man. You know, I got a situation now where again I have kind of learned and have absorbed all of the wrong things I did, all the right things I did, and it's time for the Big L to come back out, man, and put the music game back on notice, man. So I am currently working on a couple of records right now. Hopefully, by the next couple of months, you will hear Link back in circulation.
All right, so it's simmering in the pot. It ain't ready yet, but it's simmering in the pot, getting cooked.
Get ready. The water's boiling. I'm putting the seasoning on it and stirring it up. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. So by the time it come out, it's gonna be fall off the bone good.
Thought you knew.
Yes, sir. If you know, you know. So before we conclude the interview, Link, shout outs you want to give and plug your social.
Definitely. If you want to keep up with me, man, you can follow me on Facebook, Lincoln, Link Browder. I am on Twitter at Link Music 69. And I'm also on IG as Link the Artist 69, man. So make sure you stay tuned with me. Definitely got shows coming up, man. If you down south, I'll be in Princeton, Texas on September 20th, man. Also, I will be in Plainview, Texas on October 25th. Those are just a couple of things I got going on, man. I want to shout out to my squad who is always working hard for me. You guys don't know who they are, but it's Team Link, the invisible guys behind them, behind what makes me tick. Definitely got to shout out to my fans because they have been extremely patient with me. I'm always promising them, hey, I'm gonna drop this, and I never really have because for unforeseen little whatever. But I love my fans and they definitely love me. And I got to give you a shout out, Jarrell, man, for having me on the Beyond the Album Cover podcast. I know we kind of missed, or I won't say I kind of dropped the ball a couple of times that prohibited me from being on here sooner, but we finally worked it out, man. And I appreciate it, brother. It was a blast. You're very knowledgeable of the music industry, man, and it was very refreshing to be able to speak to somebody who was as knowledgeable about the 90s era as you are, man.
I appreciate you. That's the era I grew up in, so I know it and I love it. And you can catch this interview wherever you stream podcasts and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/beyond the album cover. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big thank you to the one and only Link. Link, thank you for coming on Beyond the Album Cover, and you're welcome to come back anytime.
Appreciate it, brother. Much love.
Yes, sir.